Hi, in this episode, I am joined by Charlotte, who's a clinical research associate based in the UK. Charlotte, welcome to the Last Monitoring Visit podcast.
Thank you for having me. It's great to be on the podcast and share my experience with everybody.
We're so happy that you're with us and we want to learn about you. And we want to start by learning from your background. Tell me a little bit about what did you study? How did you come into knowing about the clinical research industry? And also, what drew you towards this profession, this industry?
So I did start off studying zoology for my
Mhm.
undergraduate degree. Um, so that was about 5 years ago now. And as soon as I left university, I went straight into a clinical research role. Not
Mhm.
intentionally. At this point, I hadn't heard about clinical trials, didn't know what they were, didn't know what the different career paths were in it, but I just, like a lot of us do in the last year of uni, applied for everything.
Right.
Everything that you thought, "Yep, that sounds fine. That suits me. I think I've got the qualifications to do that." And like a lot of us, we didn't hear back from a lot of them, unfortunately. But this one role, I did hear back. They did want to interview me. It was a research analyst role at
Mhm.
the local hospital stroke university. And I got my first role as a research analyst working on an osteoporosis study. Very small study, very the team, there was four of us, project manager, clinical trial coordinator, and another research analyst who was helping me out, training me. So that's where I started.
How interesting. So
Yeah,
how do you do I'm gonna ask a little bit out of ignorance because I've never been a research analyst. I've just been a CRA and clinical operations. What does a research analyst do?
so what I did, and I'm not sure if this is the standard, what a research
Mhm.
analyst did, but my role was looking for eligible patients in the database from the medical records, approaching them for the study to see if they're interested, consenting them, so going for the patient information sheet with them. And then once they had consented, collecting their data, their questionnaires that they'd filled out. And
Right.
I was also responsible for inputting their data into the system that they were using to analyze the
Mhm.
results, basically to see what the likelihood these patients had of developing osteoporosis based on their health questionnaires and based on a CT scan looking at their bone density. So I was
Yeah.
looking at the data,
How interesting.
calculating the results, logging the results. So it's kind of a little bit of a mix between sort of data manager, but also clinical trials
And
administrator, coordinator.
yeah, yeah, sort of a study coordinator slash data entry slash administrator. It's very
Exactly.
interesting role, but at the same time, although it's not the typical study coordinator or CTA
Yeah.
role, it still gave you a lot of insight into what the operations of a clinical study is.
Yeah, definitely. I had many conversations with my study coordinator, who's also my line manager, about how
Mhm.
she got into the role, what she does for her role, why she's doing certain things, like why she keeps talking to the regulatory department and why she filing this paper in this file and all these sorts of things.
So you
And
were curious about it.
yes,
You wanted that. That's amazing. I love when I
yes,
hear curiosity coming up because I think it's the one key that will help you learn what you like the most and learn what your next step.
yeah,
If you decide that you need a next step, what's it going to be? Only curiosity will help guide you towards where you want to go next.
100%. Yeah, the best way to do it is just to ask questions of anybody and everybody. Ask as many questions as you can, get all the information, start piecing it together,
Mm.
listen to what they've said, research more, look into the different roles that they've mentioned, into this document, that document, all the processes. And it's such a great way to get a wealth of knowledge and a better understanding of whatever career you're in, whether it be clinical trials or it be finance or business. So
Yeah.
asking questions is a great tool.
Yeah. So, how did you learn about the CRA role? What was your first interaction with the clinical operations side of the study?
So I learned about the CRA role a little bit further into my career. I went from being the research analyst and then being a CTA, so a private medical device company working on some of their studies that they had going. And I worked for about 2 years as CTA, and I was starting to look at what's my next move? Where do I want to go next? Is it project management or project coordinator? Do I want to stay in clinical trials? Want to move to
Mm,
quality or somewhere else? And it was about this time we were ramping up a new big internal study that they were running. And for this, they needed a CRA. I was like, okay, that's fine. We'd used a freelance one before. We'll use them again. I'm like, oh, I've not heard
no
of a
way.
CRA before.
I
What's a
can do it.
CRA? Yeah. What did they do? Why don't we have one already? Why are they freelance? And that's when I started learning about the role. I thought, okay, I'll have a look, see what it's all about. Researched it a little bit more, watched more YouTube videos about the role. But oh, that sounds quite interesting. I'd be quite interested in traveling more, working more with the
Doesn't that
hospitals,
sound
the
fun?
sites. Yeah, this traveling sounds amazing. Who wouldn't want to do that as a job role? Um, yeah, so that's when I learned about the CRA role, got a bit more exposure to other roles in the industry as well at this point, sort of medical monitors, data
Mm-hmm.
managers, all those sort of job roles. But I wasn't interested in those positions, but the CRA role at that time did speak to me.
Mm-hmm.
And so I looked, just thought, I'll have a look, see what jobs are out there. And it was a startup CRO that were looking for a junior CRA to join their team.
Yeah.
It was also at this point I didn't realize that I was also doing a few roles as a CRA as a CTA anyway.
Yeah.
So I was performing, I was delivering SIVs and
Yeah.
doing internal checks. So
That's so common. It's so common that other roles or supporting roles actually do tasks of the traditional CRA role already. And
yeah,
I remember myself included when I started as a clinical trial assistant, I was already also doing tasks that traditionally are from the CRA role. And I do
yeah,
think though, and I wonder if you see it as well, I do think that it only shows a trend towards the CRA role being more fragmented into having professionals who are going to specialize in specific tasks or
mm,
parts. Maybe a CRA who specializes in activation, maybe a CRA who specializes in the study startup phase, and then we have CRAs who only do remote monitorings, while all others only do on-site. So I think that the time where we used to have other roles pick from the CRA role, it only proves
agree.
that the CRAs were so busy and so overwhelmed and had so hundreds
Yes,
of tasks to do that in the end you just delegate and you naturally and organically just spread these CRA activities towards and through other roles.
yes, definitely. It's nice to see it expanding and evolving in that way to segment it so you've got these different pathways. You thought, I do like
Mhm.
this aspect of the CRO role, but I don't enjoy doing that. Or
Exactly.
I would like to gain more experience doing just this one side of it because I've got so much experience doing
Yeah.
monitoring visits. But the study startup, I've not experienced so much. So yeah, it's
Yep.
great to
Yeah.
segment it that way
Yep.
and
Yeah.
have
Another nice part about that segmentation and that a little bit freedom of choice is, and I talked recently with a community member who recently had a child, and she was saying, now I don't want to travel as much,
mhm,
so do I need to consider stop being a CRA because I love the job and I love contributing to the clinical research industry. And what she did was she talked to her manager and to her study team, and she was assigned, and she still is only assigned and allocated to the clinical study that she could remotely monitor. And that's
wow.
amazing. It really shows how when you have a little bit of experience and you have specific situations or specific moments in your life where you want to choose. You want to be given the option to choose. Maybe you want to travel more sometimes because you want to travel the world. And sometimes
Yes.
I love that too. That's also, I love that part of the role. But at one point, maybe you want a bit more home based and maybe less traveling. Or sometimes, as you said, I haven't seen Study Startup yet. I
Yeah.
want to see it. Can I get some insights into that or a role that takes me closer to that? That's also the beauty of it.
Yeah. It's great to hear that companies are being more flexible with
Yeah.
that as well. And more adapted to keep their staff that I know are great staff members that
Exactly.
have so much experience, and you don't want to lose them. So we'll just
Yep.
adapt to them and have these
Exactly.
roles that can be fulfilled by other people, which, yeah, it's amazing to see that that's happening now.
It's very hard to have senior CRAs, and we also see that more and more, where the tenure of the CRAs is quite short. So we have
Yes.
CRAs who have 2, 3 years experience, but we have less and less CRAs who have 10 years experience.
Yeah.
And I was a CRA for almost 5 years, and I know 100%, I know that I haven't seen everything that I could have seen as a CRA in 5 years. There's always something new. There's always something more to learn, always something that is new in the clinical industry. And because we're innovating and we're progressing very fast as well, the CRA role needs to progress with it too. So it's very hard for companies when you don't have so many senior CRAs. Well, if they want, or if they're asking for a more remote study and you want to keep that senior CRA, why not try to see if in your portfolio of studies you have studies that are more adequate or that match the employees' needs? And I think that's it's amazing. It's really good.
Yeah, it really is. And like you said, there's so much that happens in clinical trials, and there's so many different therapeutic areas, all the new drugs, the new devices,
Yeah,
everything can
yeah,
change quite quickly. So yeah, that you can have CRAs that have been in the job role 10 years and they'll still come across things that they've
yeah,
never encountered before.
absolutely.
And it'd be great to retain those people so you can keep the wealth of knowledge after
Yes.
just your job roles.
Charlotte, you've been now in the clinical research industry for quite a bit, and you've been a CRA also for a bit. And I am sure that you've come across a few challenges because, like any
Yes,
role, the CRA is no different. So we do face some challenges on the role. And
we
I can
do.
also think of a few, right? But when I say a challenge that you're currently facing, or that your role as a CRA is facing, what's the first thing that comes to mind?
I have a few things that come to mind. One of the things that came to mind first was when I first started as a
Mm-hmm.
CRA as a junior. And the challenge I found was the adapting to the pressures of monitoring visits.
Mm.
So when you first do monitoring visits, you're usually with someone who's more experienced, you're doing it with them, you're shadowing until you eventually build up to
Yeah.
doing it yourself.
Yeah.
And monitoring visits, you spend a lot of time planning it. You go, right, what do I need to go through? What do I need to obtain? Or what do I need to provide the site? You have your plan in place, your structure, you know how you're going to plan your day when you get there. I'm going to start with SDB, or I'm going to start with reviewing consent forms. And you get there, and straight off the bat, you've got a major compliance issue. A patient has gone under a study procedure and they've not been consented,
Yep.
or you've discovered an SAE that's not been reported by the site, but they're aware of it. Or it could
Yeah.
just be a couple of minor issues that build up, so your plan for the day is thrown.
Yeah.
And for me, I found as a junior CRA doing it for the first time on your own, that could be quite stressful,
Oh God,
not being able to
absolutely.
follow your plan. And
Absolutely.
it's even stressful because you're not used to having to adjust
Hmm.
your structure of the day to what you might find on site. Or it might be stressful because you feel like you're not meeting the metrics you're supposed to be meeting that day. You're not getting through all the SDV you were planned to get through that day. And so you're going to have to go back for additional monitoring visits to complete it all. And that takes a little bit of time to get used to. It's just a process of getting comfortable with being more flexible on site, being a bit more adaptable, preparing for what could go wrong on site when you get there.
Yep.
Also, it depends
Yep.
on the history of the site. If it's been a site you've had from the beginning, you know, from the get go, I've checked this is fine, they're really good at doing this. But then, or is this one that I've just taken over from another
Yeah.
CRO or another
Yep.
CRA, and I don't know what I'm going to find. And
Yeah.
also, just being in communication with project manager. Project managers are so valuable to have,
Oh yeah.
and to constantly
Absolutely.
communicate with them throughout the monitoring visit and have their support. It makes the world a difference, especially when
Hmm.
you're not sure on how to structure your day. After you found a major non-compliance, you can talk to them, and then or talk to other senior CRAs, have a community that you talk to saying, I found this,
Oh,
what do I do? How do I structure my day?
yeah.
I think
Yeah.
that really
Exactly.
helps.
Exactly. I love the challenge that you shared, and I love that you also mentioned handover of studies from other CRAs. And if I think of my biggest challenge when I was a CRA, it really was studies that were handed over to me, because I'm a bit of a I tend to think that I love control and having things under control, and studies were no different. I loved to,
Mhm.
as soon as I could, to put my studies up to date and to put them clean and to have them ready so that they were audit ready. They were perfect.
Yes.
They can freeze my database log at any point. It's ready. It doesn't matter at any point. So I would know that. I would have certainty. That gave me peace of mind. But then whenever I would be handed over a new study, everything is like as you said, everything comes down. It's you don't know where to start, you don't know what to start with, and even if they tell you, no, 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 we hand you over a study that's completely fine, you know it's not. And not only you know it's
Yeah.
not, just because you haven't done it, you don't have the certainty 100% that it's ready and
Yeah.
it's inspection ready. So my struggle was always, when I would get a handover, even though I would know and I would absolutely trust the CRA and I absolutely trust the colleagues because I know they work great and they were great CRAs, I still didn't know 100% because I didn't do it. I didn't do that monitoring, or
Yeah.
I didn't close those logs. So I would always need extra time or extra stress on a monitoring visit day so that I find the time to go back and check things that should not occupy my day on that
Yeah.
monitoring visit. Charlotte, you are a very active of the CRA Connect community, and I know you're super passionate about sharing your knowledge, and you are also a mentor for more junior CRAs. And I would love to maybe ask you for a tip or an advice or a guidance that you usually give more junior CRAs, because on this podcast we have many who are aspiring to be CRAs or who are in the first steps of being CRAs.
Yeah.
And what is that advice or tip that you wish you had when you first started?
One of the tips I wish I had when I first started, that kind of
Mm.
pertains to what I've said previously, is don't be afraid to ask questions. Ask questions of everybody and anybody you can. Ask them as many as possible. If you need to ask the same question over again, keep asking, keep growing
Mhm.
that knowledge. Use it as a tool. Speak to all different job roles. Speak to obviously your senior CRAs, your project managers. Speak to data managers or clinical specialists. If you can,
Yeah.
speak to your medical monitor, or kind of step out a bit. Speak to um, if you're in-house, speak to your device manufacturer,
Mm.
or speak to your site staff, speak to the research nurses, and just ask all the questions that you need to ask to understand their role, how it applies to your
Yeah.
role, how you can work better with them, what information you need to know and be useful for you to have a good understanding of to be successful in your role. And then my other tip would be more for junior CRAs is,
Uh-huh.
even though you're junior, you can still take the opportunity to mentor other staff members. Take the opportunity to there's always CTAs that are looking to make that jump. So it'd be very valuable for them to know from you
Mhm.
as a junior how you just made that step. What made
Yeah.
you a senior CTA, or if you came from another job role, how you got there, what you know about the role already, what your process was, or if
Yeah.
it's a junior data manager that's looking to step into the CRA role, just
Yeah.
mentor juniors, because it's such a great way to solidify what it is you already know. And just teaching is just a great tool to concretize your
Mhm.
knowledge. So yeah, I do know this stuff. I am ready for this role, and I've got things to share with juniors. I
I
think that'd
love
be
that.
is great for everybody to get involved with if you can.
I love that tip. And if I was thinking while you were answering also, what tip of advice would I have liked to had when I first started? It also is very connected to what you just said. And for every single clinical research associate or clinical ops role that I've seen
Mhm.
out there, all of them ask for great communication skills. And
Yes.
then when I first started, I thought, what does that mean? I can speak, I can communicate what I need from you or what I would need from your sites, but it's such a difference when you have good communication skills. And I didn't learn until much later that being able to communicate information in a very concise, in a very direct, in a very
Mm.
constructive way, in a very clear way, it's so much different. It makes such a big difference when you're monitoring clinical
Mhm.
studies, because you need to have information transmitted, received, and sometimes even you need the sites to remember what you told them weeks ago. So it
Yes.
has to be something that's very clear and it's memorable for them as well. You can't be repeating constantly what you need to say. So I think I wish I was told back then that as soon as I could, to start mentoring other
Mhm.
CRAs or other clinical trial assistants, because through mentorship, I think you are forced to think concisely and how you transmit information, how you deliver information. How am I going to explain to a more junior CRA the phases of a clinical trial, or the tasks and responsibilities of a CRA, or how do you keep updated an ETMF or the ISF, or what is a live document? If
Yeah.
at the beginning, from the very start, I was forced to think how to put the information concisely, the critical information, and deliver that, I think it would, from the very start, build that communication skills, that when you go on site and you have to deliver a site initiation visit presentation, instead of taking 2 hours of boring slide after
Yeah.
slide after slide that nobody will remember, you can be a little bit more creative. You can be very
Mhm.
clear, very concise, very direct, and very relevant. Pick the information that is most relevant and make sure that your sites remember that, and that they somehow get stuck with the information in their mind, so that whenever they're going to do that patient visit, they remember, oh no, Maria told us this. Remember that? Yes. Charlotte,
Yes.
thank you so much for being with us on this episode. It's amazing to have insights and to have exposure to more CRAs out there, to more different backgrounds and to more different experiences, and to tips and to hacks and to pieces of advice. So thank you for being with us.
Great. No, thank you. It's been lovely to be on the podcast, share my knowledge and give advice to anybody who's listening. And if anybody does have any questions that they want to ask me, feel free to drop me a message on LinkedIn or CRA
Yeah.
Connect. I'm always happy to share information to anybody and everybody who wants to know about
Yeah.
anything. So yeah, no, thank you. It's been lovely to talk to you today.
Thank you, Charlotte.